Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NBA Front Office Show. Today, we're going to talk about free agency. We're going to break down the point guards of this year's free agent class. We'll talk a little bit of news as well. But before we dive into everything, quick reminder tomorrow night, we've got game 6 of the NBA Finals. I will be over on Playback. We'll be doing our live play by play of that game. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to put the link in the description down below. Come join us. We'll talk some basketball as the game is on. Want to make sure I get that in before I get mid-show and then I forget about it. So make sure you guys click on that link. We'll be over on Playback. During the game, you can watch the NBA Front Office live stream of the game. We're showing you the game and watching it with you. It is a lot of fun, so come join us for that. Keith Smith at Keith Smith NBA. How are you doing? And I'm excited to get into the free agent list today. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, I'm super excited. We might only have one basketball game left this year. Tomorrow night, We'll see, or in this season, I should say. Not this year. Clearly, there's going to be plenty of games in the fall and winter. But yeah, we're getting down to it there.
Summer League, just a few weeks away. Let's go.
True. But yeah, we're getting it's. I mean, free agent time is 15 days away. 6 p.m. June 30th. Everything gets open and cranking, and that's when we'll start getting those Woj bombs. And we don't really have a thing for Shams, right? They nobody's created anything.
So. Nothing that's stuck. I've seen people try the Shams wow.
Yeah, I've seen that
stuff too. Like that, but nothing that's really stuck. So we'll see. At this point, I just don't think we're going to land on it. Like it would have happened by now, if
and it's going to happen.
Going to be a solution. Absolutely.
Right. Like it's just gotta organically be created. But yeah, but yeah, man, we're there. So we've got a little bit of news to touch on, a little bit of rumor stuff, and then we're gonna dive deep into point guards today. We're gonna talk the free agent point guard class.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the news. Keith Pompey had out there that the 76ers are kind of gauging the market on Matisse Thybulle and Tobias Harris. Now, Tobias Harris, obviously, big contract. It might not be easy to move that, but a lot of teams looking for essentially that skill set, big wing that can give you some outside shooting, a little bit of switchability on defense. Still makes a lot, so that's going to be a bit of a challenge. But interesting that those are the two pieces that they're looking to potentially move as they look to reshape their roster in order to improve upon what they had last season and kind of adjust around James Harden and Joel Embiid, because remember, they didn't know that they were going to have James Harden when they built that roster or added pieces last summer. So now they get a chance to really kind of dial in exactly what they want next to these two stars now. So it will be interesting to see exactly what path they choose and if there's a trade out there for those players. We talked about Matisse Thybulle the other day, Keith, and you mentioned that he's becoming more and more like, instead of a 3-and-D, just D, not really known for any kind of shooting or anything like that. What do you think his market is going to be like? And then we'll get into Tobias.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be all that robust for Matisse Thybulle. I just think you're in a position where he's very good. He's an all defense level good, maybe even a defensive player of the year good. But at the guard wing position, that's tricky to pay, that much for a guy who just, he's almost starting to become not just a poor shooter, but a non-shooter. And that's, in a lot of ways, I think that I always say that's more dangerous than being a poor shooter. So yeah, I'm a little worried about where he's going to go for sure.
And then what about Tobias Harris? I mean, this is a pretty big time contract for him. See, he's the kind of guy where if we separate the contract from the player, you say, okay, this is a guy a lot of teams want, but he's going to be making, $79 million over the next 2 seasons?
Yeah,
that's a lot. That's a lot to pay Tobias Harris, who probably he's at his best if he's your maybe 3rd best player, 4th best player is probably ideal. So what happens with Tobias Harris? Is there a team out there you think that's willing to take a shot on him?
Yeah, somebody probably would, maybe, but I think it's going to involve Philly taking back some money that they don't necessarily really like all that much, or Philly's going to have to pay in draft picks. The going rate has historically been for every $20 million in unwanted salary or bad salary, it's 1 first-round pick. So you're talking 2 first-rounders you'd have to give up if you're Philly, and I don't know. I mean, maybe even 3. That's too far for me. I wouldn't.
But he's a
never do that.
productive player, right? He's not just. That's the hard part.
The challenge with Tobias Harris, and this goes back to his Orlando Magic days, he's a guy who can average 20 points per game, but he is the kind of the epitome of he scores 30 one night and 10 the next, and it's 20 points. And you'd rather just know, all right, I'm getting 20 every night from a guy versus, already exploded for a game and then he had a couple poor games and those kind of things. He's always just been a little bit of an inconsistent scorer. There's sometimes when he goes through entire games, you don't even really know he's out there. And that's, that's a problem when you're paying a guy essentially what's a max contract that, for the amount of money he's got left over the next 2 years. So we'll see. It's going to have to take some creativity out of Daryl Morey, but he's one of the more creative GMs. So maybe he will find something that's workable.
Hopefully there is something that can be found that will work there, and they may be able to figure out a way to move Tobias Harris to a team that could use him and find pieces that are going to fit. What are you looking for if you're Philly? What is it that this team badly needs? I mean, you've got Tyrese Maxey. Yeah, I mean, really that's you just need shooting.
Yeah,
alongside those guys.
Yeah, you're looking for 3-and-D players, wing shooters, guys who can fill. Ideally, guys who could be small ball for you too. Maybe play small ball 4 and those kind of things. And Embiid, Harris, or Embiid, Harden, and then 3 shooters around them. Maybe Tyrese Maxey's out there too, and 2 shooters around them. So yeah, I think that's what you're looking for. But they got to be able to hold their own defensively as well, because you're starting to put an awful lot on Joel Embiid as a kind of backline defender, and that with the amount he has to carry the load offensively too, that's asking a lot of a player. So yeah, that's what you want. The challenges, everybody wants that. So
yeah, I was going to say, fortunately for the Sixers, nobody's looking for 3-and-D wing players who can shoot. Like that's every team is just clamoring for that, and there's none of it on the market right now. So not
so
much.
That's why you might have to take 3 or D, right? And that's where you kind of start making some trade-offs and you start looking at it. I think over the last probably really since kind of the Warriors came into being, the Warriors several years back, I think what I have really started to think about is, can these guys play in deep into the playoffs? Can you have that guy on the floor deep into the playoffs? There's that player going to cause you so many issues on one end or the other. They have to take him out, and that's one of the things that I tend to think a lot and frame things up. And that's tough to find those guys you really truly trust both ways. Even look in the finals, there's a handful of guys on both sides where it's I trust the guy a heck of a lot more when my team has the ball or when my team doesn't have the ball or whatever it is. It's just interesting to look at the way the game has evolved.
All right, well let's get into the free agent point guards that are out there.
Love it.
This is, I'm always excited for free agency, but Keith, you have put together a list of free agents and you've ranked them. You put them, well, I shouldn't say ranked. You put them in tiers, which is different.
I never ranked them within the tiers. So that's
you ranked them within the tiers. But I mean, I think in general, a tier-based system gives you a more accurate representation of what's really out there, because the different teams have different spending ability, right? So if you are a team who you're only going to have the mid-level exception or the taxpayer mid-level exception, something like that, and you see a list of players and there's nobody in your rotation player tier or fringe player tier, well, you're probably out of luck. You're not going to, because you're not getting the top tier guys. And conversely, if you are a team that's got a ton of cap room and you see there's not many targets in the upper tier, but there's a ton of those mid-tier guys, well, that tells you that if you do spend on somebody, it might not be that 1A guy that you were hoping to go get with that cap room that you've got. So I think the tier-based system is important because it visually demonstrates not just the depth that's out there, but the quality in each tier that's available on the market.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is roughly the way teams look at this too. One of the things that teams do is they'll take a whole bunch of guys and they'll put them on a board and Every once in a while, that whiteboard maybe gets leaked and we get a picture of it. Or if you're the Dallas Cowboys, you
literally takes a picture of it.
right? Or if you're the Dallas Cowboys, your owner GM holds up his draft board, at a press conference when he's talking about the draft. But I think it's what's important to think about here is how teams look at this is they plug guys into 4 tiers, occasionally get into 5. And those tiers are all-star, starter, rotation, and fringe. And I'll explain those very briefly. Sometimes the all-star tier is broken into like superstar, or they'll call it like a max all-star. As we go through these over the next several shows, there's very few players even in that all-star tier. Doesn't necessarily mean the player is coming off an all-star appearance. Sometimes the guys haven't even made an all-star game, but it's, do you consider them an all-star level of player? So that's where the all-star tier is. The starter tier, again, similar. They don't always have to be a starter, but they have to be a guy who have a starter level impact. So I always think of like when James Harden was the Thunder's 6th man.
You still list him as a starter.
Hero, right? Tyler Hero would be in the starter tier this year, even though he came off the bench all year, because that's how good he is. Rotation players, exactly what it sounds like. They're guys who you can plug into your rotation. And this is an important distinction here too. This is generally based around the regular season. The ranking is where it comes into determination there. But a rotation player is, we can put him in our 9-10 man rotation and feel pretty good about that. And then fringe, that's your last 5 guys on your roster. So maybe your last 3. You're going to see most of the two-way players are in the fringe category, those kind of things. And those guys are they're fringe players because what you're kind of looking at with those guys is they maybe they're in the league, maybe they're not in the league. It's, they're probably filling the end of the roster spot. So really, it's exactly what it sounds like. They're on the fringe. So with that in mind, then what I do after I plug them into a tier is I go through and rank the players within those tiers. Every once in a while, I'll get in there and I'll be like, all right, I blew this one. Got to move that guy up a tier or something like that. When people want to yell about these in the comments, you can yell at me. These are my rankings. Trevor didn't have anything to do with these. I put these together, so he'll, obviously voice his displeasure with these as we go if he sees any. But you want to get started right at the top?
Yeah, let's do it. Kyrie Irving, number 1 all-star. Yep,
the only all-star I think of the free agent class. Say what you want about Kyrie, he's still great. There's all sorts of issues that come with him for sure. I would be really nervous about giving him a 5-year max deal. But production-wise, still a great player, still an all-star player, and by far and away the best point guard in this free agent class.
Do you think he's legitimately in this class? Like, do you think he's actually available, or is this just foregone conclusion? He's back with the Nets. Teams, it's not even worth pursuing.
I think he will opt out, but I think he will re-sign with the Nets. And I think what you're going to do is he's going to re-sign on a max deal, but it would be a max deal of the same length to tie him rather to Kevin Garnett. All right, I keep doing that, man. Kevin Durant. Tie him to Kevin Durant so that they are locked in together with the future, whether it be with Brooklyn the whole way through those contracts or not, but they're under contract for the same time.
Yeah, I could see something like that happening. Again, if you're a team that's in need of a point guard, which there aren't a lot out there actually that are in need of point guards, but if you're a team that's in need of a point guard and you're thinking maybe we can steal Kyrie Irving away in free agency, probably not happening. So when I look at this, yes, he's unrestricted. Is he really available on the market? Probably not, though.
Yeah, and that's a good call out there too. You see it listed here if you're watching on YouTube. It's listed unrestricted, or if it's unrestricted with a player option or restricted with a player option. There's a couple of team options as well in there and those kind of things. So for example, I'll just skip to him. Like John Wall, he's my 9th ranked point guard, unrestricted player option. He's going to opt in.
Yes.
There's no world in which he is not. I would say the same very likely of Russell Westbrook as well. But this is all the possible free agents, so I have them all on here. Then what I do is as they opt in, I just take them off, bump everybody else up, accordingly, and off we go as guys will opt in. So the starter group, 3 players, in my opinion, Jalen Brunson, Tyus Jones, Russell Westbrook, in that order. If we talk them almost reverse order, Russ is what he is, but still a starting level point guard. Has been. He would still probably start for several teams in the league if he was even on a different team. But he's not going to likely be a free agent, so we don't need to spend a lot of time. I will say this, and I'm curious for your thoughts on this, because this is, to me, far more interesting than making you talk about Russ for countless more minutes when you've already done it for hours. I was torn. I'm not going to lie. I almost put Tyus Jones ahead of Jalen Brunson.
I was just thinking about that. I was just thinking about it. And here was the thought that popped into my head when I saw those 2 names just now. As you were talking about Russ, I'm looking at Tyus and I'm looking at Jalen Brunson, and I thought, if you put Tyus Jones in Jalen Brunson's role with the Mavs this season, how different would it be? Would it be different? Like, what would the outcome be that much worse than what you got out of Jalen Brunson? Now, and part of me thought maybe I'm too high on Tyus Jones, but the fact that you said that makes me feel a little bit better, because I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, could you make an argument that Tyus Jones could actually be ahead here? I think when we factor in contracts, because I think Jalen Brunson is going to get way more than Tyus Jones is going to get, I would lean towards Tyus Jones being the better value and being the guy I would rather have in terms of bang for your buck, considering contract, with that being factored in. But I still will give the nod to Jalen Brunson, because he made a lot of really difficult shots this season, did a nice job getting into the paint. Tyus Jones was fantastic for the Grizzlies whenever John Morant was out. I'm still going to give the slight nod to Brunson, because we've seen him in that role, that key guy. This guy has to score the basketball for us. That job over the course of the season. Tyus Jones, his role kind of fluctuated throughout the season depending on Jaw's health. We saw him do it when need be, but again, we didn't see him do it for a full season. So I would rank it as you have it ranked, but it is interesting when you look at those guys. And then in particular, when we start talking about what kind of contract they're going to get this offseason, I don't know that Jalen Brunson is the guy I would pick when you factor in the salaries they're going to receive this summer.
Yeah, so I will say this too. I agonize over these rankings. I spend a lot of time on these. I don't just throw the guys in here. Like, I literally have probably spent, I don't know, well over 100 hours doing research, diving into stuff, looking at things, trying to really sort through these and put a real level of effort into this. In the end, Jalen Brunson, he's going to get paid considerably more than Tyus Jones. It may even be double what Tyus Jones makes. I think that's crazy. If you put them both in the $18 to $20 million range, I'd feel really good about those contracts for both of them. I think instead you're going to see Jones probably around $12 million a year, and Brunson probably in the $24, $25 million a year range. I just think that's where this is headed. I think fit would really be the difference here. Jalen Brunson, more of a scoring point guard than a distributing point guard. He did make major strides as a playmaker, and that was why I think I bumped him, because I think he's now shown already can run the show. So did that plenty while Luka was out. But Tyus Jones is just, to me, there's no better backup point guard in the entire league, and he has shown when John Morant is out, he can start and carry the load and just keep you moving. Never, ever turns it over. Better shooter and scorer than he gets credit for. I just love this guy. So that's why, it's so funny too, because if we had done this even a year ago, if you had told me Russ was down in the starter tier and was the lowest ranked of 3 players in the starter tier, it would have been like, what, did his leg fall off? Like, or one of his arms went missing? What happened here? But that kind of, to me, that speaks to the level of fall off, but it's also, there's a big age gap there between him and Brunson and Jones, so that's where I've got those 2 guys just enough ahead of him. But yeah, it makes me feel good, because I kind of expected a little bit of, wait, what? Jones and Brunson are that close for you? But Tyus Jones is really good, and so is Jalen Brunson. I just think Jones is massively underrated.
No, I'm pulling the basketball reference stats between the two right now, so I can kind of compare apples to apples. And yeah, it is ridiculously close when you get into the advanced stats. How good these guys are now. And the other thing to factor in is their usage rate or usage percentage on basketball reference 22% for Jalen Brunson, just 16.6% for Tyus Jones. So again, you got to factor that in as well.
Can you
but
pull
if you
that
look
up
at
on the screen?
yeah. In fact, I'm going to do that right now. So Jalen Brunson, Tyus Jones.
This is fancy stuff now. Come on, guys. This is front office show has gone big time here.
That's right. That's right. It's our new system here. Let's just really just kind of show off everything that we need to show. When we talk about stats, boom, we can put them right there on screen, which is fantastic. But so you look at their PER, which I mean, it's a flawed stat, but at least it can give you some kind of idea of comparing the two. But what I look at is I look a lot at like the usage percentage, almost 22% for Jalen Brunson, and you've got 16.6% for Tyus Jones. And yet, if I scroll over a bit and I'm able to look at things like their value over replacement, I look at their win share, it's pretty darn close between these two guys in a lot of ways, in a way that would suggest that one guy shouldn't be making almost double what the other guy is. Now, you could even look at this and say, well, Tyus Jones, if you increase that usage percentage, you put him in that Jalen Brunson situation, do all of his stats just go up in accordance to that? Does his effectiveness go up? Does his impact go up at the same level? And that's not always the case. Sure. That's why sometimes it's dangerous to look at like per 36 or per 48 or whatever it is that you want to look at, particularly if you have a guy who's extremely low in minutes. That can muddy the water a little bit because let's face it, the more you play, the more fatigue becomes an issue, the more opposing defenses will key in on that player. Certainly there were defenses
more minutes against starters too in those cases usually.
That's a huge factor as well. So I don't want to just look at this and say Tyus Jones greater than sign Jalen Brunson. Clearly, give him more minutes, give him a bigger role. He's going to produce better stats because it doesn't always work that way in the NBA. But I think it is noticeable how similar they are to the point where I wouldn't be comfortable giving Jalen Brunson double what Tyus Jones gets. And yet I think that may be what ultimately happens here.
Yeah, that's exactly like I said. I think Tyus Jones is probably going to be in the $12 million range, and I think Brunson's probably going to be in the $25 million range. And you're paying Jalen Brunson that much, you better hope that it's scalable for him to live up to, whatever that bigger contract is. And it may be. I like Jalen. I don't want this to get conflicted at all, or that's not the right word, but conflated maybe. I don't want people to take this as I don't like Jalen Brunson, because I do. I really like Tyus Jones. That's more the takeaway I hope people are coming away with here is like, it's just, maybe Brunson should get a little bit less, but Tyus Jones should get a lot more. And some of these teams that are looking at point guards, all right, if Brunson says, doesn't matter, I'm not leaving Dallas, all is not lost. Maybe you got to take a closer look at Tyus Jones. And if I was the Grizzlies, I'd be doing everything I could to keep Tyus Jones. Within reason.
Sure.
Because I love John Morant. But I think John Morant's a guy who's probably going to miss 15, 20, 25 games a season. And you really want to make sure you're covered behind him if that is the case. Absolutely.
All right, let's jump back over into your list. Let me get to that in just a moment here. As far as the starters go. Yeah. As far as the starters go, I mean, that's pretty much it. There's not a lot of teams right now that need help out there in terms of the point guard position. But if you're looking for a point guard, there's just not a lot out there on this market in terms of like solid quality starters that are available to sign in free agency.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're looking for a starting point guard, you're better, unless you really feel good you can get Brunson or Jones, you better start looking at the trade market pretty heavily.
Which may not be the word. Like, there's so many teams that are pretty well set at the point guard position that the trade market, it's probably not going to be terrible to go find. I think it's certainly going to be easier to go make a trade that lands you a point guard than it would be to make a trade to go get a 3-and-D wing or something like that.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair too. And there's couple other things too. Like someone may ask, like, where's Colin Sexton? If you don't see him on the position you think, I probably have him ranked under another position. I could promise you I didn't forget guys out of this. Like, I'm really certain I've got everybody accounted for. But Colin Sexton, I've got him under the shooting guards. One of the things that happens in those situations is you want to kind of look at that in a how I look at it is, well, where did the guy play and what is his role projected on a I hate to say a regular team, but kind of a regular team. Like, what would it be? And you know what? If you think of Colin Sexton as a point guard, that's fine. Think of him as a point guard. I don't have any issue with that. Just plug him in where you think he would be. And we'll do, after we finish the 5 positions, we'll do an overall top 50. And I think that'll give a little bit more picture of where some guys fall. But back to these point guards. Now, as weak as the top of this grouping is, I think there's a lot of really interesting players in the rotation group.
Yes.
We are not going to go through every single one of them, so don't worry. This is not going to turn into a 2-hour-long show. But a couple of my favorites out of this group, I think Gary Payton II has earned himself a pretty big payday. Is he a point guard? I don't know. Maybe. Is he a shooting guard? I don't know. Is he a small forward? Yeah, maybe. He's just a good basketball player at the end of the day. That's what he is, and he's proven he can fit anywhere. His performance in the NBA Finals on the biggest stage, we see sometimes guys get a pretty nice bump out of that. So I think he's earned himself a pretty good payday, and I think he's a player the Warriors are probably going to extend quite a bit to keep there in Golden State, because it's they're just in a tricky spot to replace guys if they leave. So I think they'll do what they can to keep him.
Yeah, agreed. That's definitely one that jumps out. You've got him in the one spot there. I want to jump down to, well, one of the things that stood out to me, Dennis Schroeder sitting below Ricky Rubio, below Patty Mills, below DeLon Wright, below Frank Jackson.
That's probably the shocker for people.
That is for me too. But Dennis Schroeder's certainly fallen quite a bit here. His free agency obviously didn't go the way he wanted it to last summer. I don't know what it's going to look like for him this summer either. What's going to be out there after kind of getting bounced out of Boston, and then he's in Houston, and what that looks like there. He's still a talented player, but I think he'll be a bargain for somebody. I just don't, that big offer, I just don't see it being out there for him though.
Yeah, there may be some bias creeping in there. I did not enjoy my half season plus of Dennis Schroeder time. It was not my favorite time to cover the Boston Celtics, and he was a portion of that. So I fully admit that. Can still score, but that's really all he does. He's when he gets assists, it's more of he drove looking to score and he couldn't, so he kicked it out and the guy hit a jump shot. Or, he left it for the big for a layup or something like that. He's not a natural playmaker for others, but his scoring guard. Here's the thing. This is where fit really matters, is when you get into the rotation spots. Because if you're a team that says, man, we just need somebody who can get us 10 points per game off the bench, then a Schroeder should be near the top of your list. Go get him then, right? That's what you need. And if you're okay saying he's never going to close a game for us, he's probably not going to start for us, but we need 10 points a night off the bench, 100% go get Dennis Schroeder. Just overall, I'm not that big. Going back up to the top real quick, just because I don't want to. I feel like he's kind of become a forgotten man because he got hurt and then traded while hurt. Ricky Rubio was having a great season last year.
He was.
Yep. He's going to miss probably half of this year. It'll probably be late January, early February. Probably he almost is going to be like one of those trade deadline acquisitions for whoever signs him. But if you've got enough guard depth where you can get by in the first half of the year, sign Ricky Rubio, and then you probably have added one of the better backup point guards that'll get added on the trade deadline, especially if you can afford put him in your 15th roster spot. Remember, in the NBA, there's no injured list or injured reserve. Everybody takes up a roster spot, but put him on the roster and let him rehab and do his thing, and you're probably in good shape. That said, I think he's probably going back to Cleveland. That's been the rumor out there for quite some time, but good player. Patty Mills, interesting. We'll see what happens with his player option. I think it's probably right around the same money he'd make if he opted out, but he might be of the age where he would opt out and then re-sign to add another year on. I've always kind of liked DeLon Wright. As a player, I think I've always liked him more than what he's actually shown. He's one of those guys where we talked a lot about the scalability. Is he scalable? Because every time he plays more, I start to like him a little bit less. When he's a backup or he's kind of your
that's not a good thing.
No, that's a little concerning. But if he's your third guard in a 3-guard rotation, it's probably not the end of the world. All right, sure. I want to talk real quick about Frank Jackson.
Yes, let's do this.
I'm betting on some stuff here with Frank Jackson because he got his most significant playing time last year with the Detroit Pistons, and it wasn't always pretty. His shooting dropped way off. He shot only 31% from 3, 40% overall. But I think he showed a little bit more off the dribble scoring. He showed a little bit more ability to do some stuff. In the year before with Detroit, he was at 41% from 3. So one of those two things is real. I'm not entirely sure which one, but if I was talking about going and getting a guy and throwing him, maybe $3-4 million, part of my mid-level exception, I'd feel pretty good about doing that with Frank Jackson. I feel like there's something there as far as being a bench shooter scorer that fits. This one's a little bit more feel and a little bit more. Yeah, when he was out there with Cade Cunningham and some others, he looked better than when he was kind of, all right, it's your show, run it now. That always got a little bit messy.
So 23 years old, Frank Jackson, just turned 24. And he shot from 3 in each of his seasons. His first 2 seasons, 31% and 32. Round up, you get 33%. Then 41%. Then back down if we round up to 31% last season. To me, that tells me he's got 3 subpar shooting seasons from 3, and then 1 season that's well above that. That to me sounds like the outlier, but when I factor in the age, it's possible that there's still development there, and that 141% from 3 season gives you an idea of what he's truly capable of. But I'm just a little hesitant because, again, 3 seasons out of 4, he was below league average from behind the arc, and then 1 season he happened to be well above it.
Yeah, this one needs to be one where I feel pretty good about everything else I've got. So why not take a shot on this guy? And if he pops, maybe he takes us to the next level. If not, we go. We already talked Dennis Schroeder. Then it's kind of just you get into that veteran chunk of guys. It's just a whole bunch of vets that can all do different stuff. I think they all deserve roster spots somewhere for teams. I think, a couple of these guys, I think Corey Joseph, Kendrick Nunn's kind of guaranteed to pick up his player option. Corey Joseph very likely to pick up his as well. But it really kind of depends. If you need bench scoring, you go with a Goran Dragic. If you need a guy who can defend, you probably look at Javon Carter. If you need someone who can run your offense, Gigi Augustin's your guy. I love Isaiah Thomas's comeback with the Hornets, but there are times where that got a little bumpy. Lou Williams and Rajon Rondo, maybe they hang on. We'll see with Rondo's recent legal issues if anybody wants to touch him as a player. But those 2 guys they're right at the very end. Might be kind of done for those guys. Raul Neto, he's just kind of always been solid-ish. If he's your third point guard, you're probably pretty good at the position. If he's your third guy, so this one just kind of becomes, is there somebody who can really fill a need for us that we like? And then, go grab those guys. And it wouldn't surprise me to see Carter, Dragic back with their current teams back in Milwaukee and Brooklyn, because both those teams kind of like them. It's kind of interesting. It's not exactly what happened, but Carter kind of was let go for Dragic. So that's kind of odd there. And, he honestly too, I will say he should have played more for the Bucks in the playoffs.
Yeah, I like Javon Carter. I think for teams that have, if you've got a star and you want to put that's going to have the ball a lot, and you just want somebody who can defend the point guard position and knock in an open shot, I think he's actually a really good option for a lot of teams.
If I was the Lakers and they did something where they traded Russ and then that rebalanced, maybe they trade him and they get a couple wings or something. There's not a point guard coming back. Javon Carter would be a guy I would think about giving, a contract to and bringing in, because I think he would fit. He doesn't really need the ball, but he's going to defend. can make some shots, can do some stuff as a secondary playmaker. Close out and stuff.
I've done 2 in-depth breakdowns so far of building out the Lakers roster for Lakers Nation in different circumstances. One where the Lakers are willing to give up everything that they've got, everything that's not nailed down to try to win right now. What does that look like? And then another one where, okay, Russell Westbrook stays. What does that look like? How do you build out that roster? So I've done 2 of those roster builds so far and put those over on the Lakers Nation YouTube channel. And in both situations, I wound up going after Jevon Carter in free agency because, like you said, he's a great fit alongside a guy like LeBron. You could say it for the Clippers too, alongside Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, just about any star. When you need somebody who can just defend like crazy, it's almost like the Mario Chalmers role, very similar to the way I thought of Mario Chalmers with those Heat teams. So I think he can play that role and play it well. So I'm interested to see what ultimately happens with him.
The other thing that's important to know with him too, Brooklyn owes him $3.9 million for next season, so you might be able to get him a little bit cheaper than you're thinking because he's already getting paid a chunk from the Nets after they waived him. A couple guys in the fringe, and we normally won't spend a lot of time in the fringe category, but a couple guys who I think of this as guys who could kind of elevate themselves out of this. David Duke Jr. showed some stuff on a 2-way for the Nets last year. He's an interesting player. He's a guard. He's got some decent size. So he showed some stuff there. Aaron Holiday, I'm going to guess he doesn't even get the qualifying offer, ends up unrestricted, but he's a guy every once in a while you see one of these young point guards get picked up by a team on a minimum deal. And then the next thing you know, that's like, all right, that guy popped and he's kind of playing pretty well. That's kind of like a Gary Payton-ish, did that. Sometimes it takes point guards a couple years to get there. Facundo Campazzo, I don't know what to make of him. He was such a fun player a couple years ago, but didn't play much. And that was on a team that didn't have a lot at point guard for a lot of the year, and he really fell out of the Nuggets. My guess is he just goes back overseas and finishes out, has a great overseas career. And then I don't know, man. I don't know what to make of Elfrid Payton. But at this point, I think he's just, someone will pick him up. He'll be somebody's third point guard, and he'll hang around, and hopefully, that team will hold peak and pop, midway through. And then the only other guy I want to mention is Trent Forrest of the Jazz. He was an interesting player at times for Utah. He spent most of the year on a 2-way and then got converted right at the end of the regular season. So, but spoiler alert, it doesn't look a whole lot better on the other 4 positions. This is not the best free agent class.
No,
I could tell you right now, sneak peek for anybody who's very interested and going to follow along with us. I only have 5 total all-star players in this class, and only counting all-stars and starters together, only 30 total players in that bucket. There. So we'll show you the rest of the positions on another show coming down the line. But there's a reason we've been calling it the summer of the trade because it's certainly not the summer of the free agents. So, but yeah, I think if teams want to get better, and I do think teams are going to be pushing hard to improve, it's going to have to be via the trade market.
If you're listening to the podcast version of this, go check out the YouTube channel so you can kind of see some of the stuff that we were talking about. Hopefully you were able to still hear most of the names. I think we did a good job, at least, of talking about the different names that we're going through here. But
I will also say this too. I will have articles about each position in my overall top 50 up on Spot Track over the coming weeks as we get into free agency here in 15 days.
That's right. The draft, right? I mean, the draft is almost here. We've got free agency. We've got summer league. We've got all kinds. It is going to be absolute craziness going on around the NBA. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Make sure you are subscribing right here to the NBA Front Office YouTube channel. Again, don't forget to go check out the podcast as well over on Apple Podcasts. We appreciate all the 5-star ratings and reviews that we can get. It's a great way to help out the show. We will do, I don't know if it'll be tomorrow, depend on how the news looks, but we will get further into the free agency rankings. We'll get the shooting guard, small forward, power forward, centers. We'll go through all of it so that we are prepared for free agency, as ready as we can be. And then when that buzzer sounds and it starts, we'll be waiting for those Woj bombs to drop. It's going to be a lot of fun. Oh, Keith. All right. We made it through we got to show off a little bit more of our system here. Had a few little hiccups, but
that's all right.
We survived.
We'll stitch it
We
together.
survived.
No one will even.
That's right. Well, they will now that we mentioned it. Till
That's
next time,
okay.
everybody. See ya and stay safe.